We commence with leaders' questions, and I call on Deputy Micheal Martin, who has 3 minutes.
Taoiseach, the Irish public, and especially the women of Ireland, have been genuinely shocked at the failure to inform Vicky Phelan and many other women of the false negative screening results of smear tests which they undertook, and also at the appalling manner in which Vicky Phelan was treated since. That she was forced all the way into the High Court before settling her case, I think is particularly objectionable. And that the state was denying up until then that a breach of duty occurred in not informing her of the false negative smear test. The state subsequently apologised, and the Minister did after the court settlement. And what is genuinely shocking, Taoiseach, is that the Minister was only informed on Monday the 16th of April by his department officials in a memo about this case, and it references wider issues. I think the Minister should publish the memo as agreed, but I'm disappointed we haven't received it up to now, and I thought I would. It was, and we had discussions this morning, myself and Deputy Donnelly, with the Minister and some officials, and it was revealed there that there had been intense discussions between department officials and Cervical Check in advance of this case and in relation to this case. But the Minister wasn't told anything about those discussions, is what I picked up at that. What were the nature of these discussions, and why wasn't the Minister brought into the loop at that particular point in time? We know that in July 2016, the former Clinical Director of Cervical Check sent a letter to clinicians outlining a 3-point plan. And the last point in that was, in cases where a woman has died, simply ensure the result is recorded in the woman's notes. It was that coldly clinical, and one would argue illegal as well, to deprive a family of vital information of that kind, which was the intention of that plan. And the senior management team of the Cervical Check would have been aware of that plan, would have approved of that plan. The question is, who else was aware of that plan at senior level, either within the HSE, within Cervical Check, or within the department itself? The memo to the Minister anticipates adverse publicity because a press release is prepared for the Minister in the event of the case going public. And some of the information in the memo is, to me, it appears to be wrong and inaccurate and false, in that the sense is created in the memo that women were informed of their results, when in fact we now know that the women were not informed of their results. And that's contrary to the impression that I took from the memo as I read it, and I think that certainly is an issue. I think the failure to anticipate the earth-shattering nature of this case by the department, and indeed the Minister laterally when he was informed, is very, very worrying. The frenzied reaction since, and the appalling communications, has created genuine worry and shock across the country. It took so long to find out how many women had died. 17 women have died since. Up to 162, I think, victims not told of their results. 8,000 calls. The failure to anticipate any of this, to prepare for it, and to have the homework done in advance of this case becoming public is genuinely shocking in my view, and needs to be reflected on. And Taoiseach, finally, it was announced 3 years ago, in November 2015, in the context of the Health Information Bill and the packet of measures that you announced, that open disclosure would be legislated for in the Health Information Bill. That bill has not yet been completed. And this morning the Minister and officials were saying there's a culture of paternalism within the medical profession. Now, that was after the baby death scandal in Portlaoise. And I think it's extraordinary that in nearly 3 years that bill hasn't been legislated for, and the open disclosure commitment that you made, subsequently changed your mind on, hasn't been provided for. Taoiseach, you've made this comment a number of times about that it would have made no difference if people had been told, or women had been told in advance. And you're making that from a clinical perspective in terms of the actual diagnosis of cancer and the response to it. But I would suggest it would have made a hell of a difference to the women involved and to their families, because essentially in not informing the women, their families were being deprived of vital information. Because when a family loses a mother, they lose a lot in terms of the subsequent care of children in such a family, and in the duty of care to the spouse of a woman who has passed away as a result of cancer or indeed any illness. And I think that it goes to the heart of this case, and that's why Vicky Phelan's fought so hard. Families have needs, and the fact that there was a deliberate policy decision, it seems to me, that in the event of women having died, the information was merely to be noted on a file, and the family denied that information, which is their entitlement to know the circumstances surrounding their mother's death, is truly shocking. And what is extraordinarily disconcerting is that senior people within Cervical, Care Check in particular, approved of this policy, and also, it seems to me, someone must have known at senior level within the HSE, because the State Claims Agency doesn't act in isolation. It's a government agency. It takes instructions. It's under the Department of Public Expenditure. And yet government in the last number of days has been articulating a view that it's somewhere out there in the ether that does its own work independent of anybody. It can't be true. And likewise, senior people in the Department of Health must have known, because it said to me this morning there was intense discussions between Health and Cervical Check.
There'll be more time later in the day, Taoiseach.
But everybody knew, but nobody knew, and nobody could tell us anything in the last week. It had to be dragged and drip-fed in a frenzied way.
Thank you.
I have to put that to you, Taoiseach.
Thank you.